Well, yeah, thanks again for agreeing to kind of sit down and have
Yeah.
this sort of longer conversation. It's hopefully you're staying warm. It's a very, very cold, blustery day here in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, my office is about as big as what you can see. And I literally just cracked the door because the heat is on. And I'm like, oh, I'm going
Yeah,
to overheat in
yeah,
here. So yeah, I'm good right now. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. We got kind of the two extremes going.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of excited to dive in because, like I think I mentioned before, we talked a few weeks ago, and so I got a little bit of your background and your story. I was making an effort to kind of connect with
Hmm.
founders in kind of the FamTech space here in Chicago. So we talked a little bit, but I wanted to obviously kind of go a little bit more, in depth, sort of the origin story of your company and even your story leading up to that. But real quick, so for your
Yeah.
company, Inciteful Med, um, I want you to give just kind of like a quick, slightly more, I guess, detailed sort of elevator pitch because I've seen you describe it as a sort of healthcare research companion. I think that's the phrasing that you've used. But tell me a little bit more about
Our
sort of
positioning, we're always testing, what's going to land. It's the
yeah,
marketer in me. But yeah.
y- yeah.
Uh,
But I like that. But I want you to kind of give you a chance to kind of sort of give the full elevator pitch.
Yeah, for sure. So, Insightful Med is a health information and self advocacy tool. So, it involves research, but how do you also take that research and make it actionable, right? Information is only as powerful as it can create change and allow you to do things. So, that is what we're trying to build. It's made specifically for patients and caregivers and their problems, which you would think would be all of healthcare's problems, but the reality is that's not the case. And so, how it works is it takes your health context and connects you to the science and the research and literature that you can then use to answer your questions, explain, your diagnosis or what might be going on, explore treatment options, find clinical trials, find strategies for how to manage care, in and outside of your home. Uh, and the thing that we're really proud about is that every single statement and answer is cited, like from either from the science or from your medical record. So you have full transparency into what you're reading and why. So I like to say we show you the receipts, which is, I think, becoming even more important in the age of Gen AI and just culturally
Hmm.
when you're wondering, is this real? Where did it come
Yeah,
from? Who said it? All of that. So
yeah.
we're having like a trust crisis, and so
Hmm.
we've been thinking a lot about how to help people
Yeah.
in that um, in that problem space.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and when it comes to healthcare, making complex decisions oftentimes and having to do research and all of the like various problems that come up, when you're, dealing with something or dealing with a health challenge of some kind. I think it's kind of interesting with founders. Some companies said, okay, hey, here's this really specific problem. We're going to go build a product to solve it. And that's like a common sort of story. But I think your story and the story of your company is a little bit different, and it was a slightly more sort of roundabout way that I think you sort of arrived at. Hey, wait a minute. I think there's this solution and there's this problem, and we think there's like some opportunity to go sort of put those two together, in just for the way that you started the company. So I think that's kind of the segue of like your marketing background and all of your sort of professional experience. At what point did you start exploring this path of like being an entrepreneur and a founder, and then that probably leads right into kind of the origin story of the company too.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because pretty much my whole career people kept telling me like you should just start your own company, and I was like, "No, like I like your baby more than mine. Like my role is working in, supporting and making your efforts take off." And so I sort of was
Hmm.
resistant to this for a really long time. Um and sort of how did we get here was
Hmm.
my co-founder, Mike Wizoon. He's really the brains behind the tech and the company, uh, and how we got here. He and I worked together. He had founded a previous company that I was an early hire at, and we had standing desks right next to each other for many years, and we just hit it off. He's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, and his brain just fundamentally works differently from mine, and I just find that fascinating. So
Hmm.
a little tangent here is like one of the things I've learned throughout my professional career is like your happiness is directly correlated to the people that you're working with. And you could have the dream job in the dream company and still be miserable if the people mix isn't in there, and they will play a really high role. So one of the big reasons why I'm here is because of Mike and our working relationship, and just trying to constantly surround myself with people that I admire and feel like I can learn from all of the time.
Hmm.
So, um, Mike, probably about 5 years ago at this time, he's one of those people that's just constantly building and tinkering. Like, he probably would be diagnosed with the ADHD at this point. Like, he's just constantly trying new stuff,
Hmm.
and it's awesome. And so he built an academic literature discovery tool using citation data just as a fun side project to see if he could. It would use a bunch of different tech that he wanted to learn, and he's constantly researching stuff and going back to the root of science and credibility research. So he built this tool. He sent out one tweet, and this is the part that pains me as a marketer, is like the product basically went viral off of one tweet. It ended up on the front page of Hacker News. It built this audience overnight, and like
Hmm.
niche audience with librarians and academic researchers who were looking for ways to connect and find other researchers, other people studying their topic, and ways to work together. It sort of works like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. That's like my non-technical version of how this
Hmm.
tool works. But
Yeah.
it filled a real need that he just made because it was a problem he had and was curious about, and now it has all these monthly active users and has a life of its own. And that was sort of it. I wasn't involved at any point in this. This was just his side project that he would call me and tell me about sometimes. And then somebody in Mike's family got sick, and they were, going through the healthcare system, trying to figure out what was going on. And eventually like didn't really get any answers. They'd run a bunch of tests and had a bunch of data, and were basically told like, go home, we'll see you in 6 months, we're just gonna keep an eye on things. And as a patient and a caregiver, that's like the worst thing you can hear. You're just like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I feel dismissed. I feel like you didn't do your job. Like, this is my life. Like, what could be going on? And so Mike, having this tool that he created, was like, all right, I'm going to go see if I can find any research to help us understand what could be potentially going on. Um, and he did. He found a paper that matched all of the symptoms and findings of the medical records of his family member, and it pointed to a diagnosis that the team had missed. And so a couple of weeks later, they had taken that information back, they'd gotten a second opinion, and they had a cancer diagnosis, to the point where, waiting 6 months to let things continue to progress, uh, certainly wouldn't have been good.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
know what would have happened, but like clearly not anything good. And so that's the point where Mike called me, a little bit later, once things were a little more under control, and said, hey, that thing I built as a fun project, I think there's another application here that could really help people. And it's one of those problems that until you're in it, you don't really realize the severity and acute pressure to become the expert in an area that people go spend years and years and years getting expensive
Hmm.
degrees in. And so, how can we then build tools to help people better self advocate for themselves in those situations when they think something might
Yeah.
not be quite right? What do they do? And that's how we formed the company. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
in. I care a lot about equity. I'm constantly trying to build products that make the world a better place. And so it was just the right fit. I personally
Mm-hmm.
had some stuff going on as well in the health space, and so I was starting to get a little bit more familiar with this problem area as well, not
Yeah.
as acutely as his family, but yeah, that's how we
Mm-hmm.
sort of started.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious if when he came to you with that idea or the story about, hey, I think there's something here, did the light bulb just immediately go off for you? Were you you got it, it clicked, and you were on board, or did the marketing brain take you down a bunch of different paths of thinking through all of the different ways of like, okay, who's the audience? Let's go out and research like what other companies might be doing in the space, like, or was it just a quick thing? It was like, no, this makes sense. People will need people will need something like this. How quickly did you get on board? Is maybe the shorter question.
Yeah. I got on board sort of like halfway. I was like, this sounds interesting. Let's give it a couple
Yeah.
months to do exactly what you're talking about, like to explore. Is there something
Yeah.
here? Neither one of us come from a healthcare background. We come from consumer tech and like information tech type tools, knowledge
Mm-hmm.
tools. So we knew that we were going to have some, a major learning curve to try to figure out all of those things: positioning, audience, competitors, that type of stuff.
Yep.
And at the same time, as we started research, I would talk about this, and almost every single person has a story. Oh yeah, that happened to me, or my mom, or my grandpa, or like this problem was just
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. It wasn't something that people were forthcoming with until you sort of put it out there, and they're like, oh yeah, that has a problem. And like, oh, by the way, this is not new. Like WebMD try to exist to solve this problem for a while.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard about Dr. Google, sort of used in a derogatory term in a way by doctors. So
Yeah.
like this idea of this human emotion of something quite life-changing could be happening to me, and I have a loss of control and no information.
Yeah.
It was sort of obvious that that was a problem. How we could solve it and for whom and in what way, that was sort of like all the business side. But for
Mm-hmm.
sure, there was an anchor into the problem,
Yeah.
and sort of seeing that like pretty clear.
Yeah. And not coming from the healthcare space and more of a consumer tech background, what in those like really early days, what were some of the first times that you guys sort of got beaten up a little bit and punched in the face of just like running into
Oh, that still
issues?
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But were there moments that stand out to you that you just started to maybe question things or maybe kind of understand where the kind of the challenges were going to be that you, I don't know, maybe didn't expect?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, we came into this being like, we're patients. We understand the patient problem, the caregiver problem. We want to solve this for patients. This is going to be consumer facing. And not knowing much about healthcare, probably the first 6 months, I just talked to literally anybody that I could
Yeah.
get on the phone. And what I heard nonstop, like, I don't think one person was like, oh yeah, this will work for consumers. They're like, oh, you can't do that. This can't be consumer facing. Consumers
Mm-hmm.
won't pay. There's no market here. People have tried and failed. Like, you got to go B2B. You got to go into the healthcare institutions. You got to find the line item. You got to do all this stuff. And so we were like, okay, like, sounds plausible. Like, what do
Mm-hmm.
I know? And so we started pursuing that path. We started building integrations into record systems, and we started having more of those discovery calls to sort of validate the problem space there. And I think we just got super disheartened. Like, not only was it really complex, but we kept hearing that the problems that they wanted us to solve, they were just different, and they were in some ways competing with the values and the ethos of why we were interested in solving this problem in the first place. I'll give you an example. We would talk
Mm-hmm.
to hospital systems and say like, oh, we can take over your patient education. You get those pamphlets, those one sheets. They're very generic. They don't tell you that much information. They're not helpful. We can make this very personalized for patients. They're like, cool, that sounds good. And they're like, but it's kind of generic on purpose. Like that lowers our liability and exposure as a hospital system. We can't give people the wrong information or even like potentially weird information. So we don't actually want it to be all that personalized. And I was like, well, like that's literally the reason why people go and Google after they leave you. Like, what are you trying to solve? Or then we would hear, this is great, but I want to be able to edit the content that people can see before patients see it. And we're like, why? And they're like, well, my practice doesn't offer that treatment option or that thing. And so if patients know that, then they'll leave. They'll leave my practice. They'll leave the healthcare system. And I was like, wait, like what? Like I became very cynical, or I guess less naive of many of the undercurrents and incentives within healthcare that people that work here in this industry know very well. And, we kind of just kept going, and we got to the point where Mike and I just looked at each other and we're like, are you having fun? Like, are we even doing what we want to be doing?
Yeah.
And like, to what end? And we just sort of had this moment of like, screw it. Like, we know that there's a real problem here. We've experienced it. Every patient we talk to has experienced it. And we're going to try to solve this patient problem for patients outside of the institutions, despite all institutional wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
And see what happens. And, nobody can predict the future, but like, we're going to try. And I would rather try and fail at doing that than build something that is not a salve to the actual problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, as you're explaining all this, I can totally picture those conversations where you're talking to the consumers and they're like, absolutely, that's a problem. We would love a solution to that. And you're going to probably hear that over and over and over and like reinforce and probably like get some excitement and momentum. They're like, okay, there's a problem, it needs to be solved. And then the second you start to talk to people that are part of the big, institutions and the big complex, healthcare system and any sort of like big, slow, there's all that complexity. You're probably going to hear a lot of, no, that's not going to work. And then it's like you get the highs and the lows and then you're like, okay, who do we listen to?
Totally.
But it's interesting to me that you kind of had that point of just saying, all right, you know what, everything we've learned, we're going all in and just like sort of building for the user. What were like either to make that decision to just keep going forward or like after you guys had kind of decided that and you like started building stuff, what were some of the early signals that you looked at, whether it was from like the marketing or the messaging or even like just feedback on the product? What were some of those things that kind of helped you to kind of say, all right, we'll keep going. We're onto something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, perhaps the elephant in the room is we're building at the same time as ChatGPT is like coming to market and other Gen AI tools are. And I mean, some of this is social media algorithms, but I cannot like open any news app or social media post without seeing some story about how that tool in the hands of a patient changed their course of care. And it was so every day I felt like our problem statement and market was being validated by bigger players. So we were like, okay, like, and they're raising tons of money off of it. Their TAM is getting bigger, right? Like you're seeing all these signs and it's like, okay, so then it becomes, how do you start? What are the incentives behind their model? How do they work differently? And how do we really differentiate either in audience or, positioning and go to market, all of that. And so the focus really shifted that way rather than, is there a there there? It was like, clearly there was. Or at least OpenAI was really invested in getting other people to believe that there's a there there. I happen to agree, but yeah.
I'm kind of curious how you respond, and maybe you heard this from some people, because I have startups that I've either worked with or been close with people, and just sort of as they're building stuff, especially like you said, this huge wave of just like AI, just
Mhm.
like availability and access that people have to it. And then you have startups where the very quick sort of cynical feedback is like, all right, you're building this thing, but like, can't people kind of find access all the information on their own, like like you said, using
Yeah.
ChatGPT or using some of these other AI solutions out there. Was that something that you heard from either people who maybe didn't know the full extent of what you were building, or was that feedback that you had to kind of overcome when people were learning about the product?
Oh, sure. And I mean, still, right? Like
Yeah.
one of our big, uh, there's sort of like tranches now. There's the people that are just like, AI
Yeah.
is evil. I will use none of it. You are AI, right? I don't want
Yeah.
to use you. And we're like, well, like that's a whole other thing to unpack. I have a lot of
Yeah.
perspective and opinions there. And then we have people being like, well, I already used this other thing and it's fine. And it's like, all right, well, um, what we found was that for an audience of people that are actually dealing with a serious diagnosis like a cancer, or they have a chronic condition or maybe a rare disease, like they understand the value and the importance of accuracy. They're already reading all of the science like that they
Hmm.
possibly can. They're buying subscriptions to journals. They were essentially trying to get a PhD in whatever area of disease they are, like on their own. And so for people that were really in, not just health anxious or curious or, what should I do, which is a much broader audience, for people that were really in it, like some of the things that we were able to do and just how our tech works differently, they got it immediately. It was like, oh,
Hmm.
I can see the papers. I can see the exact excerpt that you're referencing. You pull out the number from my health data to connect those two. Oh, you can connect across specialties. It was like, this is not an LLM. And like they got it because they had
Yeah.
used an LLM on their stuff and knew enough to know that it was not accurate 100% of the time, or this wasn't, it was fine, but like not exact. Um,
Hmm.
and so a lot of it was just like trying both tools. Like we'd have people
Yeah.
be like, oh, I put my stuff, I was only using ChatGPT before and now I use your stuff. And it's like, it's telling me stuff my doctor didn't tell me. It's
Hmm.
telling me stuff that I didn't know about. It's showing me clinical trials that I could get. It was just like much more comprehensive.
Yeah.
And so on a marketing front, I've been thinking a lot about like one of our values as a company is this transparency, right? Like we want to know if where we're not as good as a competitor and we want to build to that. Like we don't want to say like, oh, you're locked into us and don't share your data. So like,
Hmm.
is there a strategy where we say like, yeah, we'll run all three models against it. We'll give you every output. You can come to us. We'll show you what the Insightful Med answer looks like. We'll, do the same thing for ChatGPT and, Anthropic models, and you can compare and like, off you go, right? Like, how do
Hmm.
you help really empower patients, to benefit them rather than, to benefit us?
Hmm.
And if we do that well, then I believe that's how you build loyalty
Hmm.
and retention into a product.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to all the AI stuff. I think I understand companies that are using AI, in the very first wave of like when ChatGPT first like came on the scene, and people were spinning up companies left and right that were just, it was just
Rappers,
ChatGPT
yeah,
with like
exactly,
a thin wrapper.
yeah.
And then I think the sort of evolution of that is like a lot of companies now kind of understand to have a lot of the putting a lot of the guardrails about what is when you're using AI, what exactly you're referencing? Are you curating and making sure that there's like guardrails around how people are sort of accessing the information, what information, and then making it really specific, and having some kind of a moat somewhere, like is sort of the point. Um, did how much? I'm kind of curious, like in your kind of marketing, how much of that do you get into with people? What kind of appetite did they have to kind of understand exactly how you're doing it? Most people probably just know, all right, if it's going to actually solve the problem and do a better job than some of these other options that I have, that's good enough for me. But like, how much do people want to get into it in your experience?
I mean, we are still, in the phase of early adopters, and early
Mm-hmm.
adopters in general, like they want to know all of the
Mm-hmm.
things, right? So
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
expect this to shift as we go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's sort of the fun of marketing at an early company, because you can sort of see what sticks with certain audiences and what's more important, and adjust as you go down. But a lot of what I talk about, and like our users today, our customers today are educated, like they want to understand. They're here because they want to understand their health, and they matters a lot, accuracy. So they want to understand how the thing works and they want to understand how it's different.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we get into a lot of it, a lot of more long form content and information to explain like what is AI? People keep talking about
Mm-hmm.
AI. That's like not very helpful. Most people, when they
Yeah.
say AI, they're talking about generative AI. What is generative AI? What is an LLM? How does an LLM even work? How do we use LLMs, and where do we not use LLMs within our product, so that we can get around the downfalls, like the cons of an LLM in this situation, and why does
Mm-hmm.
that matter? And like that's a lot to unpack. We
Yeah.
need to get way better at that story to continue to like move more mass market. But for
Mm-hmm.
now, that's the stuff that it builds trust and credibility into our tool by being so transparent about
Mm-hmm.
and educational about not just how we work, but how
Yeah.
the the ecosystem works. And like
Yeah.
add on to that, so there's like the tech component of how does AI work, and then there's also the healthcare component. uh
Mm-hmm.
and there's going to be this weird, it's already starting, this weird overlap in Venn diagram of like, okay, these new models and these new tools like still have incentives baked into them. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
know what those incentives are? And like
Yeah.
how do you figure it out? And so like it feels a lot of like what our product is really about digital literacy and tech
Mm-hmm.
literacy,
Yeah.
uh, in order to further your own self-advocacy, which is cool because Mike and I both came from education ed tech companies, so like
Mm-hmm.
we understand, like that's our jam. Like we like
Yeah.
that piece.
Yeah.
um yeah, so I don't know if that
Yeah.
it really answered your question, but
No, it does, and it I think perfectly illustrates the that kind of what I mean. I would say fun. Some people might not, but like that early stage of like healthcare and AI, these two very complicated things. And you said a Venn diagram, but I was more imagining like those two complicated things just like smashing into each other and like seeing where stuff fits together. And there's like obviously like what kind of one corner of it that you're trying to solve this very important problem. And that's actually my next question
yeah.
is um, the, some of it, like in my, you know, career, I've worked with companies where every once in a while we have this moment where like, okay, we're not saving lives. We're like, we're selling widgets or we're,
Hmm.
selling something,
Yeah.
accounting software or whatever it is. Um, how much do you think about today, just sort of the kind of the elephant in the room of like, I mean, a lot of stuff in healthcare, especially when people are working through some of these like pretty serious health situations that they find themselves in. Not that you would ever sort of like explain it as life and death, but the stakes are high, and it's like a very important thing where it's gonna require like just loads of like trust and credibility and like balancing the right messaging for kind of those more high stakes problems that people might have. How much of that are you just constantly juggling with, working through? Do you get feedback from anybody on just sort of how you talk about the company and maybe the messaging of kind of when it's landing, when it's not? And I guess what I'm getting at is like you got all these different dials, right, that you can kind of play with to connect with people. How much of that are you playing with day to day and learning and figuring out?
Um, I think like it's if I take a broader step back
Yeah.
and I think about like my career overall, right? Like I've worked at places too where, this is not as maybe serious or impactful. And
Yeah.
within those areas, there's a lot more liberty to say, oh, it's okay to overstate this. Like, this was awesome. Like not in any sort of untruthful way, but like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of marketing is copy and imagery, and you're selling a future or a feeling or a
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Uh, and as my career has progressed and I've focused more on impact tech, I've it's like a lot of that has just sort of gone away from me. It's like it's
Yeah.
very clear that the thing that people like, they don't need more stress. Like they don't need more
Mm-hmm.
BS, frankly, like coming at them. And so the message becomes, how do you succinctly tell you what to worry about or what to expect that's accurate and just hit on the feeling of
Mm-hmm.
saying like, look, we know, like, so to answer your question of like how much we play with it, I
Yeah.
think where we play is how do we demonstrate that we understand where you're coming from. Like
Mm-hmm.
how do we use stories or how do we use language to say that like, I get, as a caregiver, this feels like all on you, the stakes are so high, you don't want to screw it up. Like it's almost more stressful than being the
Mm-hmm.
patient,
Yeah.
right? And so like how do you best show that that we understand that, to get people in to start exploring and trying,
Mm-hmm.
and then once they do it, then the product does the work itself, because there's like I said, we show you the receipt, so you can very easily say like, oh, this is not like anything else I've seen or
Mm-hmm.
used, and like this gives me authority and credibility to go back and talk to my care team because I have like the actual paper with the actual
Yeah.
publication that connects to this. And even if they say that's not relevant, we now have a dialogue and I'm building trust with my care team
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's important. So I
Yeah.
guess like I've seen that shift. It's hard for me to answer specifically in this business because I feel like I've been
Yeah.
shifting away from some of those more classic marketing angles for a while. And really now it's just how do you show your um that you understand your customer and
Mm-hmm.
connect with them and at their problem space.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that checks out because I mean, just personally, I've been thinking about this a ton the last few weeks, and I'm doing a webinar in a couple weeks on this topic where marketing kind of in the famtech space to families and caregivers. I'd say a lot of times, like for a lot of companies, best case scenario, your audience is you know um, a little bit or a lot of bit stressed, and mental load is
Yeah.
what they're carrying is high. And then worst case scenario is like it's just some of the most anxious, sort of stressful situations that they've maybe ever dealt with. And marketing on that spectrum is just feels so tricky. And I feel the same thing. It's like all of the sort of traditional B2C and kind of B2B marketing that I've done my whole career, like exactly what you said, kind of feels like it goes out the window a little bit because it's not like you can say, all right, we cracked the code and we figured out the perfect headline and the campaign and oh yeah, we'll just kind of go to market and test a little bit here and there. It's more of just a constant path of just getting to know your customers better, figuring out how to exactly where they're at that stage of their journey or the problem, whatever it might be,
Yeah,
and
I think like I'm sort of a maybe a broken record on this because it's just been top of
mm-hmm,
mind for me. But like I think that marketing now, like it's all going to be around how do you build trust and credibility into your brand. And there's different ways to try to think about going about that, but the thing that undermines trust the fastest, regardless of if you're credible or transparent or anything, is like a self orientation. And like humans are pretty innately good at sensing when self orientation comes into the picture. Like we do it in our
mm-hmm,
relationships all of the time. And I think the same sort of principles apply to brand. And so I don't know, maybe this is too, you know, inspirational of a hope for humanity, but it feels like the opportunity now is not like a con or a trick. It's like just show up, be empathetic. It doesn't have to
mm-hmm,
be perfect. Meet people where they are. They want to know that you're human and that you understand. And, if you use not the best word that you can optimize over time, like I, I think there's a lot of grace there where it didn't feel like that before. And
mm-hmm,
what people are really looking for is like more of that human component and like
mm-hmm,
less perfection now that again, so much of our content, even in marketing, or mostly in marketing, probably is
mm-hmm.
coming from machines. Like things look, I mean, that's how LLMs work and stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's a regression to the mean. Everything looks the same, and
Mm-hmm.
so how do you break free from that? Well, you have an original thought and you communicate it like a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to
Yeah.
overthink it, right? So
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
And I think that's probably, um, I mean, yeah, probably all of marketing, a lot of companies, just how it changes with,
Yeah,
as the landscape
yeah,
changes.
totally.
But going back to what you said, where it's just all about trust and credibility, I think even to a degree that's every company, but even more
Yeah,
so
totally.
when you have an audience like this and the problems that you're solving. What are some of the like really specific, if we like got in the weeds and a little bit tactical, of the stuff you've done, or the stuff that you sort of plan on doing or trying to start to connect with more people and build that trust and build that credibility? Because the $1 million question I find for a lot of companies is like, okay, the reality is we have to sort of connect with a lot of these people probably before they're thrust into the middle of this very big heavy, like
Yeah.
high stress situation. But then again, people aren't often thinking too far ahead of like, oh, I need to make sure I'm planning for this thing that I've never expected to deal with. So
Right. It's
what
very
what's the
reactive. Yeah.
yeah? So what's the kind of balancing act that you guys do of like trying to connect with people at the right time and to start to build that trust without being sort of too reactive or
Yeah.
too proactive? Either one might be bad. I don't know.
Yeah. This is the $1 million question of our
Yeah.
business, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully you don't need to use a product like ours every day. Like
Yeah.
that our goal is that you are healthy and you beat whatever you're dealing with, or you
Mm-hmm.
get in a position. So we have episodic use, right? And marketing episodic use products is tricky because you have to be frequent enough that you're top of mind and people remember to come back to you rather than restarting their search for the solution to their problem when they're having it. um, and so how do you stay top of mind, or how do you reacquire them essentially every time they have an
Mm-hmm.
infrequent episodic use? um, the places where we've been focused and getting good traction has been in patient communities. Um, so they're sort of the first stop when somebody is coming into a diagnosis, um, or they're trying to manage it. There's peer group communities. It's a place for not only like advice, but support, and they cover all kinds of topics. And caregivers are also in those groups. There's even some specific communities just for caregivers of a specific type of condition or disease. And so that's been a pretty natural path, and they've been pretty responsive and interested in, because they have many of the same problems that we solve, right? It's like, well, how do I keep this forum clean of a bunch of fake news like and garbage, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that degrades the trust within the community, and like, and at the same time they don't want to be marketing products because nobody wants that either, right? So like working directly with these communities to figure out how we can support their mission and their communities on their terms has been where we've been focused. The challenge with that is it's slow. Like you're on somebody
Mm-hmm.
else's time
Yeah.
schedule. Um, we initially also said like, well, how do we get in to doctors, or what's the okay, if we can't go into large hospital systems because of the story I told before, is there an angle with independence or concierge, right? Like people in models that are already sort of trying to change healthcare for some of the same reasons that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I would say is like on the table, but still it's harder. One, it's more time consuming, and you introduce a new user, like, so you have to worry about the practices problems, and are their incentives aligned or in conflict with what we're trying to do for patients.
Yeah.
Some yes, some no, and so it's almost like screening mechanism. And then so far our primary growth channel has all been referral and like word of mouth. So one of the challenges with that though, right, is that people don't generally like being sick or having a condition is seen as their defect. So you're not generally walking around being like, I have this, and let me tell you about the best tools that have helped me in my,
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis journey and managing my condition.
Yeah.
Um, and so the referrals come, they work really well when they come, but it's not like a Dropbox play where you can say like, oh, send this to everybody and you get a ton of storage, right? It's like people
Mm-hmm.
are not going to share. It's very, and in many ways, it's very similar to tutoring, and tutoring referral, which is
Mm.
where, Mike and I came from,
Yeah.
in that landscape. So those are some of the like more tactical areas. It's a lot of outreach, a lot of listening, like I said, empathy, and trying to
Mm-hmm.
like pattern match some of the same problems. What we are not doing is we're not buying ads or targeting
Mm-hmm.
these people. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's challenging to be a marketer right now when SEO is falling off a cliff, when paid has become so inefficient, when
Mm-hmm.
everyone's trying to figure out how to get into the AI models, with different sort of like
Mm-hmm.
GEO tactics, and uh it's a lot is shifting in the field.
Yeah.
And so we're just focused on like, again, the human component, the one-to-one,
Yeah.
as our primary channels and where we're experimenting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm definitely not an expert in, anything pay per click, but it seems like maybe a logical uh, sort of fit at some point that if it's like, Google search or a search that people are looking for, information, the more traditional routes. And you're sort of saying, hey, we have this other, better, more effective way to get the information you need. But then again, I oftentimes will go to my Google Ads partner and say something like that, and he'll say, "Well, yeah, that's true, but you have no idea how competitive it is and how much it might cost, and there's just all these different things that usually point to like you said in the earlier stages, just to go more direct one-to-one and focus on either. And actually, that was my next question: is sort of, what do you find works better? Is it more like education? Is it more storytelling? Like obviously, when you're doing like real direct outreach and saying, "Hey, we've got this product that solves a problem," like that's pretty direct. But when you're doing more, I guess what I would say, like not generic, but sort of content marketing, do you find it leaning more towards education, more towards storytelling? Is it just kind of a blend? Or is there a third category maybe I'm not even thinking of? I don't know.
No, I mean, certainly stories are the best. The challenge is acquiring them.
Yeah.
Like I said, people don't generally want to talk about all of their health defects
Yeah.
in a way. So we try to do a blend. I'd say the majority of our, like, we've just started sort of social channels and like long form content writing that is more education focused as part of sort of like awareness building. If you think about
Mm-hmm.
the traditional funnel, it's like you got to make people aware of the problem. You know, you need to connect with them that you understand their problem space, but then like get into some of the nitty gritty of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you're really trying to convert to, you know, a user, it's the stories for hands
Yep.
down. And so we get testimonials and stuff all the time. I would love to be able to get to a place where we can really humanize some of those stories, and like as a marketer that feels right. And
Mm-hmm.
then I put my user, like, that's very self-oriented, right? Then I put
Yeah.
my patient hat on, and I'm like, there's no way that if somebody asked me to do that, I would get on camera and record this story. Like,
Right.
and so part of the challenge is like, how do we use that to show, again, that we're not here to exploit people,
Mm-hmm.
like, and we're not faking these things. Like, it would be very easy to take a testimonial and create an AI person saying the thing, and you'd be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like, look at that story. And it's like, do I really want to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, like the story, the human and the story part really, and that's why again referral works so well, because usually there's a relationship there. There's already some sort of established
Mm-hmm.
trust. The challenge for us is just like we still have to continue to grow for the network effects of referral to really work
Yeah.
at scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so community groups are sort of our angle in
Yeah.
or other products that support caregivers, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot. One of the things that caregiving space and care tech is sort of new to me as well. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the space is that everybody's orientation is like one tide rises all boats. So there's
Mm-hmm.
no like, what's in it for me? Or how can I, it's like, I'll promote your thing. I'll help you. This
Yeah.
is amazing. This would help all of my audience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa, right? We do the same thing. We're sort of say like, oh, we don't do anything in transit, but
Mm-hmm.
like that's a problem that people have. Like, how can we make sure that people that are in this position know of all of the resources that are available? Because
Yeah.
there are tons of founders and builders trying to create and are creating tools and products and services to help people at this very challenging time.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to fail because of the ad budget didn't succeed, or like the algorithm didn't promote them in social, it's just like, what a shame. This is where I usually get into like, I'm a bad capitalist now. I just want people to have the things that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, the point of this long ramble is like, this community has been very supportive as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, trying to lean into more of that.
Yeah.
One of the things I feel like I learned a long time ago is like, it's natural to want to fix the thing that isn't working, and you can spend a lot of cycles there, but usually the thing that returns the biggest performance, whether that's spend, whatever metric you're measuring, is just doubling down on the thing where you have any amount of momentum.
Yeah.
And stop trying to like solve the thing that's not working. It's just like, just you can't, it's hard to go against inertia. Just like double down
Mm-hmm.
on the thing that has momentum.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's our plan.
Yeah. And just about every, I think, company that I've worked with has some form of this where it's like, all right, let's figure out what the channel is or what the time best spent of our efforts. And yeah, let's put 80% of it towards that. And then still, keep the sort of 20% to go try something new or try a new channel. Are there any things that you sort of look forward to the next year and you just go, okay, from a marketing like perspective of like reaching new people or solving some of these marketing challenges that you guys have, are there things that you're like, hey, we haven't tried that yet? Maybe it's time to sort of start experimenting, whether it's a channel or I don't know, really anything that that you think about trying. Because in the earlier stages of the company, you kind of want to try everything, and it's that's good and bad. But how do you sort of look at that and prioritize a little?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that always sort of like reorients me is like, this is a consumer facing business. Like, we want to reach patients where they are. So where are they, and what are all of the touch points that we can reach them in? The thing that we haven't tried that I'm just like, I don't know, late to the game in any of my careers, I haven't done influencer marketing,
Mhm.
or a lot of social. And that feels like an opportunity to really nail the content and tell a lot of different stories and test a lot of, many of the things that you've been asking. Like, is it education
Yeah.
focused? Is it humor focused? Is it AI focused? Is it like, are we bringing levity to a really stressful situation? How do we continue to educate people around current events? Like, so there's a social content strategy as well as a potential influencer strategy. And I mean, like, micro, like, right, like something that's really resonant with
Yeah.
our very specific audience that I think could be potentially interesting,
Hmm.
that I'm just sort of curious about. But at the same time, I'm also like, I don't want to be on social. Like, like, it's like this constant push and pull of like, as a
Yeah.
user, that's not where I want to get my information. So,
Yeah.
how do you follow the market, and follow
Hmm.
your users, and find out where they're hanging out? Like,
Yeah.
is it Blue Sky now? Is it Discord? Like,
Right.
one of the challenges with patient communities is they're all still on Facebook. Like, many, because they're self-organized, many of the like the actual disease groups were bought by
Hmm.
pharmaceutical companies and the companies that organize them, because they are mining patient data and they want access
Hmm.
to patient information for, not all nefarious purposes, but again,
Yeah.
that then overlap of patient interests isn't exactly an overlap of who is funding and managing those communities. And so as a result, people leave. Like, again,
Yeah.
they can see the self orientation of, oh, this company doesn't actually want me to be in a safe space. They want to
Yeah.
like mine my data or whatnot. And so where do they go? Facebook, now that is
Hmm.
rife with many other
Mm.
competing incentives. But
Yeah.
yeah, they end up there. And so, yeah, I've
Yeah. I
dusted
have
off my
a
Facebook account and try to figure
yeah.
out how that platform's changed as well.
Yeah, I have a very weird relationship with social media. I deleted everything personally that I've had. I think I was part of that
Yeah.
generation of like Facebook launched when I was in college and one of the first
Mm-hmm.
to get it. So I was like obviously very active on Facebook, and then after a while, it just everything got to be too much, and I deleted everything. But I still have to have
Yeah.
a
You
lot
don't
of it
know
for
I mean, even just for your job, right? You need to understand
yeah,
how these channels work. And even if you are a Luddite and don't
yeah.
use them, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I will hear something like this constantly, like, if you're marketing, for yourself, as a consultant or like for your clients or whatever it might be, like if you're not marketing on Reddit, you're going to get left behind. And it's just this like, all right, now I have to go spend all of my time sort of figuring out all the ins and outs of like how to do marketing on Reddit. And maybe it works for me, maybe it works for my clients. And to me, that's just a very overwhelming thing. So,
Yeah. That's
and
another
and I
place where patient. I mean, that's talking of
Yeah.
channels where we want to experiment. Dabbled a little bit. Those communities are intense, right? There's a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
rightfully so. It's hard to. What I don't like about marketing on Reddit is that it's all sort of black magic tactics, like create a bunch of fake accounts and look, don't look like a brand, look like other
Yeah.
users that use this thing, and it's like that doesn't interest me. Like that feels
Mm-hmm.
like a quick route to disaster and
Yeah.
to degrade trust
Mm-hmm.
across many channels. And so, yeah, I'm curious to. I am paying a lot of attention to the Reddit space because it's also very relevant
Mm-hmm.
for Inciteful Med. But everything I've heard so far of like what works is kind of gross. So
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of building on that, what are your sort of thoughts or attitude about the idea of being like very, very visible as a founder? So it's like founder led, like you're kind of building alongside, and the people that you're building for, and they can sort of see you as the founder and what you're doing, and it's sort of like this form of marketing that I think. I mean, in my world, like a lot of consultants
yeah,
sort of are pushing founders to do that. And it's like the pushback that you get is huge because, I mean, I would be the same way. It's like, oh, I get that that's effective. I don't want to do that. It would be so much work. I don't have the time to do it. Lots of reasons not to do it. How much of that do you think about? Is it easy for you? Do you have to force yourself to do that stuff from time to time? Is it, how much of it feels natural? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
uh, they're mixed for sure. So
Yeah.
it's such a big part of our story, right? Like we don't come from healthcare. We have health tech advisors, doctor advisors, right? But like they're not on a traditional payroll because we are essentially a library service tool. We are a
Mm-hmm.
research tool that connects information. Um, and so the thing that we bring that's unique to why this product, why us, why for patients, why we're sort of bucking many of the trends is this founder story is personal. It's our stories, it's our experience, it's what we've seen, it's what we've learned. Um, and it's I told you I spent the first 6 months talking to hundreds of people, and it's still a big component of my week is meeting new people, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
story. And they're like, wow, I didn't trust this, and then I heard you, or I talked to you, and like your passion is contagious, and like whatever. So it's like it's become part of it's clear that it has to be part of our strategy, at least at this size and scale.
Mm-hmm.
um, what I try to do though is funnel that into more of a writing practice. So I have traditionally not had a writing practice and sort of like hesitated,
Mm-hmm.
just felt like for what? Like I don't know. I'm very achievement oriented, and so just like writing my thoughts down to like learn was like,
Mm-hmm.
what did that get me, right?
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it, and that has helped sort of organize my thoughts, solidified some perspectives, and then it feels safer when you put it out. Like I think the thing on this like founder side that I remind myself is like no one will read it, no one will see it, no one is really paying attention. Like if
Mm-hmm.
any of those things are not true and they do see it, and it's like that's lucky and it gets you
Yeah.
towards where you want to go. So like no
Yeah.
stress over the all
Yeah.
the things that vanity like holds in us of in our insecurities and wanting to be liked and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So you just got to
Mm-hmm.
push that to the side and go. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When I left the agency world, and then I was kind of starting a consulting practice, and at the time it was like LinkedIn, it was really easy to go kind of build a pretty good audience and sort of get some visibility. And so I was doing all this posting, and I had that thing of like, oh my gosh, all the people I worked with in the agency world are going to see this, and they're going to judge me, and they're going to be critical of me, and they're going to think, oh, who does Dan think he is? That
Yeah.
he's like sort of this advice
Yeah,
guru.
you get some
And
imposter syndrome for sure, right?
yeah, and then you learn inevitably you learn that thing of like, oh no, they're not thinking about me at all.
No.
Like most people are not. You have to fight for that.
Yeah, totally.
But kind of switching gears for 1 second here,
Sure.
and I only had a couple more quick questions for
Of
you.
course. This is fun. Keep going.
I feel, yeah, and I feel like every once in a while when I have these longer conversations, at some point I think, oh man, I've been like focusing way too much on just the problems, the challenges. It's sort of like oh man, this is going to feel like a gloomy episode. But I wanted to finish on kind of a high note. What are some of the things that if you and your co-founder look forward in the next year or 2 years, like what are the things that just get you really excited and really optimistic about what you're building and who you're building it for?
Well, every day is, even though if the days that growth is slow or it feels like, oh, how can we just go faster? I like reorient and say, look at these lives, these people that have told us directly the impact that we've had on them. Like, how can you quantify that? As it's we do it all, like we hear it not every day, but like consistently. And when somebody reaches out and tells us that, even if it's like, oh, it helped me be more confident, or we've had someone sort of say, I was sitting in the doctor's room, waiting for my doctor to come back in after a test. The test hit my Epic, my chart. I put it in. I had all the questions ready before my doctor even came back into the room. I'm like, that's amazing. Like those stories, like that impact, because of how personal and important the area that we're in is, like they just stick, man. Like it feels really good. And so on the hardest days, or the things that we look forward to, is like, how can we help more people in that? We also are global, right? There's nothing that's preventing us from helping people all around the world, and there's tons of need. Our tool is also multi-language. You can interact with it in whatever your native language is and get results, and it can read different languages. So I just think about the potential and the possibility and the impact that we have just at the scale that we're at. Um, and that's what gets us really excited. Um, at the same time, like I I am the space that we're in, and entrance of ChatGPT Health, and like it's all from the big players, like it feels sort of stressful because they're direct competitors and they're helpful like to humanity and to
Mhm.
people, right? So like I believe competition in products, consumer products, is good. um I don't think there's a winner take all scenario, and I think there's a lot of opportunity. Like the market is frothy, and they're doing a lot of work to educate people about the possibilities. And so like in many ways, it's kind of fun to think about how to ride on the coattails of some of the larger players with bigger budgets and sort of differentiate off of it. And if it's not us, like how can those tools still help people?
Mhm.
Healthcare is like one of those last industries that is ripe for disruption, where I really think democratization of information and access, and like getting rid of some of it just shining a light on these issues and transparency. Like there's a reason that people are talking about it nonstop, even if they're talking about it negatively. Like that's coming from a place of fear, from protection of the institutional like tranches. And at a macro level, I believe that consumer products are the thing that shape, like consumers are fickle. You have to build an excellent product that solves their need. They demand personalization, they demand transparency, they demand choice and control. And like now that we have that focused on healthcare, like I think the transformation that people in this field have wanted for a really long time, like it's coming, and it's coming fast.
Mhm.
And so like outside of our company, I'm just excited about the opportunity there. and what it'll get. Well, like, will there be bad players? Will tech be used incorrectly, or to further wrong incentives? Like 100%, that happens anytime there's a large uh,
Mm-hmm.
change. But for as many as there are of those, there will also be people pushing the boundaries and how to use it for the masses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just fundamentally exciting and like
Yeah.
uh, really interesting. So I'm excited to like sort of see where it goes. I think there's also like within healthcare specifically, there's this huge problem of sort of like interoperability and data cleanliness, and that's there because it protects the companies and the financial interests like within the space. And so people
Mm-hmm.
continuing to chip away at that wall, and tech and tools chipping away at that wall, it's going to get ugly. Like it's not going to be perfect, but like I
Yeah.
think we'll get to a better spot coming out of that will benefit, not just our company, but all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and probably start many other, billion dollar companies.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of as a closing note here, I think that's why I love having conversations like this with founders like you, because I think not some people, a lot of people probably might look at a lot of those variables and those different forces at play and sort of take the sort of more negative view of what it's going to do to either the industry or to companies or individuals or whatever it might be. But as a founder, like actually like focusing on all that opportunity for the really good stuff to come out of it, and building for that, and sort of being optimistic but also realistic about that it'd be challenging obviously, but I really love having conversations like that with people like you, and hearing your perspective and what you're building and how you're building it. And yeah, I mean, we're both here in Chicago, and hopefully
Yeah.
we'll be able to get some of the other like you said, the rising tide, get some of the other ships together, and sort of connect and see what everyone's building, and yeah, maybe have sort of a round two of this conversation at some point, and kind
Yeah.
of hear about all that momentum that you were talking about.
For sure. I mean, the concerns are like real, right? But the technology is human made, and it's like you
Yeah.
can deploy it for good or you can deploy it for bad, just like all of human history, right? And so
Yep.
I'm optimistic that there are enough people and that the barriers to entry to even building anything are coming down so that more people can figure out how that they want to use this for good, like can and will. And yeah, I think that's sort of like the powerful thing. So it's not to say, they're the concerns aren't real.
Yep.
Many of them are, but they're usually because of the human decisions behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and how they can be weaponized.
Yeah.
And yeah, hope is a choice, right? It's not a feeling that just comes. Like it's like you have to
Yeah.
work on it and believe in it. And yeah, I think the potential and the possibilities are
Yeah.
huge, both for us and for many other entrants in caregiving that want to solve these real problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a topic we could probably spend another whole hour
Yeah, for
talking
sure.
about and
Oh,
digging
so
into
many.
it. We'll save that for another episode,
Anytime.
or maybe when we get together sometime and just
Yeah, beer.
talk about some of the the marketing challenges that you're having, because my hope is that this episode will be really great for a lot of other founders who wanted to kind of dig into the marketing stuff, because a lot of founders I talk to aren't from a marketing background, and so we don't get to go as much into the weeds that I think we did today. So my hope is that it'll be helpful for some people, and also kind of get your story out there,
Yeah. You
and
just
yeah,
got to
I
keep
really
going. It's like you can't take any of the things that don't work personal, right? Like
yeah.
marketing is very similar to just being a scientist and experimenting. You got to try a bunch of stuff, and the thing that works is never the thing you think it will. So if I come back in a year, we could talk about how my failed experiment in influencer marketing and like the thing that we didn't see coming, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
that growth mindset, that learner's mindset is the thing that sets successful founders apart. It's just the
Yeah.
resilience and, not taking it personal when it doesn't work or your post doesn't get
Yep.
enough likes or, whatever it is. Right. So
Yeah.
being
Yeah. We could.
humble, it works.
Yeah. 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 Us marketers, we can always figure out a way to find find the 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb, but like to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, Eric, I appreciate it again. I'll let you get back to your day. Stay warm, and yeah, hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, and if any of your this is the other trick with my marketing my company, right? Is like everybody can be a patient tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So yeah, if the problem resonated with any of you, check us out. We're at incitefulmed.com.
Yeah, we'll do. And I'll be sure to kind of
CITE, like citations. Mm-hmm. See, there's a fun marketing wordplay there.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'll
you'll link to us. Thanks.
I'll be sure to share all the links and we'll make sure it gets out there for people to check it out.
Sweet. Awesome. Thanks,
all right.
Dan.